You're listening to Inside Beauty with Ivy Lane, where I'll be exposing deception inside the beauty industry while diving deep into inner health for outer beauty. Hello, welcome to episode 2 of Inside Beauty. I'm Ivy Lane. I'm creator of Intuitive Skin Nourishment and Holistic Skin Health. And this podcast today is going to be the first in the first season. I've decided to break down the content into different seasons. And our first season is going to be on inside the beauty industry. I'm going to be looking at some of the ways in which the beauty industry, some of the tricks they use really to sell products that aren't always what they say they are. So I'm breaking it down, and today we're going to be looking at packaging. There's lots of different ways that, marketers can use tools, images, words, and packaging to convey a message. And unless you are a savvy consumer and unless you know what it is you're actually looking for, yes, darling. Yes, darling. I was on a roll there. Anyway, as I was saying, my goal here is to help you become a conscious consumer, a savvy consumer, and teach you to be aware of some of the ways in which you can be misled and ways in which you can learn how to know whether this brand in front of you is actually what it says it is. So that's my intention. And today, first off, we're going to be starting with, let's start with packaging. So when we're looking at some of the ways in which the beauty industry can, and, skincare manufacturers can give an image. So there's the packaging, there's the images, there's the wording, there's distraction, which we'll all be getting to. But yeah, today, like I said, we're starting with packaging. Now, I'll go back. I said this in my first episode, but I'll say it first. Now, my intention here in creating this podcast is to educate and to highlight some of the things that I've noticed over the 10 years I've been making skincare products, some of the changes that are happening in the natural, little inverted commas, natural skincare and beauty industry. It's a rapidly growing industry. There's a lot of money to be made. And there are obviously some very savvy marketers out there who want to make the most of the trend of people looking for healthier, safer products. People looking for greener products, people looking for more ethical choices, and trying to make a better impact on the planet, or less of a footprint. However, as like with all trends, there's often deception. And when I first started making my skincare products, I did so because there wasn't anything that I considered natural enough. There wasn't anything that was okay for me to use on my very sensitive skin. And there also wasn't anything ethical. When I look at ethics, I want to know that what I'm buying isn't damaging other people and isn't damaging the planet. And so because there's more and more, back then there wasn't as many people aware of the needs to avoid chemicals. It was still quite a new thing, going back 10 years. More people are aware, but that unfortunately creates more of an opportunity for more people to be taken advantage of, and people out there just looking to make money rather than do the right thing. It's a big ocean of cash that can be exploited. And so I'll be going through and hopefully helping you see the difference between genuine and faux, eco, natural, healthy skincare products. So today we'll be looking at packaging. Now, packaging is one of those things in the beauty industry that a lot of money gets spent on. The amount of times I have been told by marketing experts that I need to change my packaging to give off a more of a what is the word? To give off more of a luxurious branding image, in order to portray more value of my product. Now, this is not something I can actually do. I can't just change my packaging because of the way that I make my product. So I actually use jars that are food jars. And the reason I have to use a food jar is because my products are made of natural oils, and when it's cool, they're solid. They won't tip out. But when it's warm, they turn to liquid because they're natural unprocessed oils, and I'm not willing to put things in my products that will counteract that simply for aesthetics. I want my product to work, not necessarily look a certain way. So this will be solid one time and liquid. So if I don't use an appropriate food label with the proper jar with the proper little thing in there, that little insert there stops it leaking. So I have to use that. I also am not willing to not use glass. So my products, I have been told, aren't packaged appropriately. Now, why would you think that packaging matters so much? It's because it's the first thing that we see. Now, what most people aren't aware, that when they're buying really expensive high-end products, I say high-end, really expensive products, you're not necessarily paying for the ingredients inside that product. What you're actually paying for is the packaging. And so in order to portray value in a product, it's not necessarily the ingredients that a lot of skincare companies will use, or what a beauty companies will use. It's the packaging. And this is something you really need to be aware of. So when we're looking at green packaging, and I've noticed this a lot, amber, the beautiful amber glass, is considered obviously portrays the image of natural and, homemade and ethical and sort of slow skincare, as in slow as it's been made gently and, with nature in mind, because the image of amber portrays natural. Now, there is the problem with this awful lot, this amber plastic, not just amber glass. And we'll get to plastics in a minute. But there's a certain brand, which I won't be naming brands. There's a brand of soaps that all through the supermarket that a lot of people use, and the image of the amber plastic packaging gives that it's a natural product. And unless you actually know what you're looking for and reading the ingredients, you think you're buying a good thing. You think you're buying something that's good for you. You think you're buying something that's good for the planet. Now, there are other marketing tricks added in there, which we'll be covering later, saying, what I call smoke and mirrors. Like, there's none of this, but you don't know what else is in there. They distract. So people, that's one of the ways in which companies use an image to show that their product is more to portray, not show, to portray that their product is natural and safe and non-toxic and not going to harm the planet. So now I should say all of this doesn't mean to say if somebody is using an amber glass or any of the images I'm about to say that they are necessarily trying to deceive you. There are companies out there who do the right thing and they portray what their product is. So that's not to say that because someone's using amber or somebody's using a certain image that they are trying to deceive you. What I'm trying to get across here is the importance of checking and not believing. So the age-old saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Now, when you're marketing a product and you're trying to portray something, obviously pictures are very, very powerful. So if we think about it, it's not, off the top of your head, you could probably think of some of the things that you would think of in a product, or an image that would make you think that something is natural. So, for example, leaves, wood, so I mentioned amber, leaves on the packaging, anything floral, natural tones, pastels, anything that will remind us of nature, are very often used in in logos, in on packaging to portray a natural image. Now, again, just because they're on there does not mean to say that the product isn't natural, but more often than not, companies who are aware that people are looking for more natural ingredients, they will use these images because there's no rules against that. I mean, there's no rules against using images to portray an image, but to portray something you want to portray. So companies are going to use that. They want to get a message across quickly. They want to convince you that they're selling the best, and so they will use images to convey that message, and very often deceive you into thinking a product is natural. And so part of the, so in the colours I sort of went over, so part of the reason it is important to become aware of these marketing tricks is that so you're not so easily deceived. Now, the way that you do become aware is by learning to read your labels, by learning your ingredients, becoming familiar, becoming recognisable, becoming aware of what the ingredients are and why they're there. So I will keep saying this over and over again. There's a tool out there that's the Environmental Working Group Cosmetic Database. This is your friend. It's your best friend. It's the easiest, quickest way to become educated about ingredients and how safe they are. Now, it doesn't cover ethics. It doesn't cover sustainability. These will things that I am going to be covering later. I'm going to be going into sustainability of different ingredients used in the skincare industry because, we kind of all have the idea that natural is good, like essential oils. Sorry, I just had a slight interruption from my youngest child, as usual. So some of the essential oils are very, very unsustainable. So I will be covering those. There's not necessarily an app for that or a resource. So it just becomes you need to become aware. I have done a lot of research into because this is a passion of mine. I did a lot of environmental studies at university, and I had my environmental group at high school. So sustainability is something that is very, very important to me. So I'm aware of a lot of ingredients that are very commonly used in natural eco products that actually are totally unsustainable. But that'll be coming in later episodes. So so the Environmental Working Group also has an app which you can download. Most of the products listed, you can scan a barcode and it will come up and tell you how safe, the safety score on it. The only problem is most of the products listed are in the US, some European. There's a few Australian products in there, which is really exciting to see products listed by the EWG that get really good ratings in Australia. But you can just search up your ingredients, and when the value in doing that, so so you've got you're at the shop, you've got your product in front of you, it's looking natural, it's looking good, it's portraying everything it wants, it's got none of this blah 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 things that you might be aware of are bad for you. You turn it over and there's a big long list of things that you don't actually understand what they are. So you get out your phone, you can either download the app or you can just go straight to the website, the EWG Cosmetic Database. You type in the ingredients and it will come back with a score for you. And by doing this over and over again, you actually start to become more familiar with the ingredients, and over time you end up knowing these ingredients. So I think there's a value in not just scanning a product, actually learning the ingredients and becoming aware. And then you end up being really fast. It doesn't take me long to look at the back of a product and know whether it's safe or it's not. Now, the importance, one thing you can usually quite easily you can bypass if you're in a hurry. If it's made in Europe, European standards are much safer than Australia and the US. So that's one thing you can almost guarantee that it's going to be safe, not necessarily ethical, not necessarily sustainable, but as far as damage to you and your family and your body, anything made in the European Union is going to be really, really safe, actually, especially compared to our standards. So that's one thing. If you don't have time, it's made in Europe, you know that you've got a safe product. So yes, that's it for today. I'm gonna wrap this up. I want to keep these quite short. So yes, just start being aware as you go and as you shop or you browse, even online. Have a look at the ingredients. Get to know the ingredients of products, and be aware of some of the start paying attention to some of the marketing tactics used to convince you of safety and greenness, and just start to pay attention. That's like I said, my goal is to help you become a savvy consumer, to educate you, to make choices so that when you are buying products, you are the one making the choice about what levels of chemicals you want in your body, not thinking you're buying something safe and actually lathering yourself in chemicals you didn't realize were there. So yes, next episode I will be looking at one of my favorites, the smoke and mirrors. And this is the smoke and mirrors, the magician's trick where they distract you over here with the no la-da-da-da-das, and this is what's in here. So we'll be covering that in more detail next week. So thank you very much for listening. Oh, one more thing I forgot to say. Now, if you're buying a product that is made by a pharmaceutical company or has TGA approval or has pharmaceutical associate, whatever, other organizations approval, it won't list its ingredients. So, and that is because there is, by the Therapeutic Goods Administration in Australia, there is an assumed knowledge and safety by a pharmaceutical company, a pharmacist, that they won't put anything in there that is going to harm you as a consumer. Now that's there's levels of harm, and what a pharmacist might find as an acceptable level of risk in their product might not be what you find. That's definitely not what I find. So if you're looking at a product and you can't see an ingredients list, that's known. You just know that it's because it's got TGA approval and they don't legally have to put them in there. They have to put the active ingredients, but they don't have to put the full list of ingredients. Personally, unless I really, really, really need that product, I'll steer clear. I like to know what's in my products. I like to know what I'm putting on my body. I like to make choices that I know are right for me and my family. So yes, thank you very much for listening to episode 2 of Inside Beauty. Bye-bye.